Mark chapter 6, verse 45. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to Bethsaida. While he sent the people home, after telling everyone goodbye, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Late that night, the disciples were in their boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. He intended to go past them, but when they saw him walking on the water, they cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. They were all terrified when they saw him, but Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage. I am here." Then he climbed into the boat, the wind stopped, and they were totally amazed, for they still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of the loaves. Their hearts were too hard to take it in. Before you're seated, shake somebody's hand and tell them, "Row, row, row your boat." We have, for a great number of weeks when I've been speaking, been traversing through the book of Mark, using Revelation 19:11 as kind of a core of what we're looking at, because Revelation 19:11 said that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Basically, what John was saying in Revelation is he's saying, when you talk about what Jesus has done, you might as well be predicting what he will do. And so we've been reading and looking into the stories of what Jesus did in Mark and using it as a prophetic picture of what he wants to do in our lives today. And as we've walked through it, one of the things we just a few weeks ago in Mark chapter 4 found the disciples in a storm when they were headed to the other side of the shore, and Jesus helped them out of that storm. Then they do ministry in Mark 5. Then they run into unbelief in Mark 6. Then after they get out of the place where there was unbelief, they go to a place, all of a sudden the crowd shows up, Jesus is preaching all day, and we talked about last time we talked about Mark, we talked about Jesus feeding the 5,000 men, which literally was a crowd of 20,000 people. And after that, he looks at his disciples. That's where we are right now. He looks at his disciples and he insists that they get into the boat and go over to the other side. His insistence here in the text implies to me that his disciples were hesitant. You have to ask yourself, why were they hesitant? And let me help you with that, because sometimes one of the reasons why people say, well, I just don't really enjoy reading the Bible, it's because you're not doing it right. You're looking at it as a religious book. You're looking at it as a textbook for some kind of test you're trying to pass. Why don't you look at it as a novel telling an amazing story? Because when you do that, then you kind of get in the mindset of the characters and you begin to imagine yourself right in the middle of it. And if you get into the text, what you'll remember is that of the 12 disciples, 7 of them were fishermen, and at least 4 of them were captains of their own fishing boat. So these men were very well versed with being on the water, being on the sea. And if they were hesitant to sail, it lets me know that there was something in the air that already tipped them off that a storm was coming. They were like, Jesus, I don't know if today's really a good day to sail. Could we camp here tonight? And he said, no, I insist on you getting on this boat. Jesus, you got to understand something. Following Jesus does not exempt us from dealing with storms in our lives. I wish that I could have preached on Easter Sunday and continue to preach today, that for all of you who profess to follow Jesus, all these wonderful people that went public with their faith in following Jesus today, I wish I could tell you, because you were baptized today, you'll never have another problem in your life. But if I told you that, I would be lying to your face. Because following Jesus does not exempt us from adversity, issues, struggles, and strife. In fact, In this text, I could make an argument that following Jesus sometimes leads us into adversity we didn't otherwise have to face. They are only in this storm because Jesus told them to go be in this storm. It wasn't their desire. It wasn't their will. It wasn't their plan. It was his insistence and their obedience that put them in a position of vulnerability, which is counterintuitive to what we would think God would do in our lives. The place that he was sending them is a place called Bethsaida, which, traveling across this body of water, it would have been a trip of maybe just under 6 miles. Notice all of these men who are experienced fishermen would have been able to row across that lake in under an hour. This is a short trip. However, as the passage goes on, it tells us that Jesus sends them out before evening had come. And then he comes to them in the fourth watch of the night, or about 3 or 4 in the morning. In other words, a journey that should have taken less than an hour, they were somewhere still working in the middle, halfway through, after 8 hours of rowing. 8 times as long as it should have took, and they're still only halfway through. The wind, we're told, was against them, and they were straining and toiling as they were rowing. They were literally being tortured or tormented. They were frustrated because they were doing the right thing in the right place at the right time, and yet they were feeling like every time they moved forward, they got pushed backward. I don't know if I came to talk to anybody this morning, but I feel like I'm talking somebody's language right now. That every step forward, it feels like there's 2 steps backward. And you try to figure out, well, did I do something wrong? But you recognize, no, I'm exactly where God told me to be. I was thinking about it. It's actually very interesting to me because I'm in Danville today, pastored this church for almost 12 years now. It'll be 12 years in November. And I'm here because Jesus insisted on it. Because when I came to Danville, I want to tell you something. I loved this city immediately. I fell in love with this city. People talk bad about Danville are idiots. Because this city is the greatest place I've ever found to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because in darkness, light shines really easily. I didn't want to go sit in some suburban neighborhood somewhere and collect a fat check and talk to a bunch of people ain't got no problems. I wanted to come somewhere where we could make the kingdom real. So I never had a problem with the city, and I loved the people of Danville and the people of this church. And when I met you guys, I loved you guys. But I saw a storm coming before I got here. Because we've endured a pretty horrific split in about 2017. But this church was split before I ever got here. Just didn't know it yet. The worship was in 2 different locations at the same time because we couldn't agree on what we wanted to do. And we were headed in 2 different directions, but trying to stay in the same building. And I saw the storm coming, and I said, Jesus, I'd rather. But he insisted. And I can tell you that now, 12 years later, I feel like a trip that should have took an hour has been over 12 years, and I don't feel like I'm much more than halfway there. But I read this text and I say, well, maybe I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And I think there are some of you in this room that you feel that way in your family, you feel that way in your finances, you feel that way in your spiritual walk, you feel that way in your career, you feel like this resonates with you. And I come to tell you the devil is a liar. You're not going in the wrong direction. You're not being held back. You're not being stopped, but you're being positioned for an experience that you couldn't otherwise have unless you get where Jesus is trying to position you. Because there are 3 things quickly about this text that I want you to see. I want you to see first and foremost that Jesus is aware of your storm. One of the first things that comes to mind when you're in this place of exhaustion, of anxiety, of worry, of confusion, of frustration, is the thought comes to your mind, does God even know where I am? See, because it was interesting that Jesus told them to go to the other side, but he didn't go with them. He went into the mountain to pray. Which may I parenthetically insert here that if Jesus needed prayer time, don't you? Selah. Well, I don't need to pray, Pastor. Well, Jesus did, so you must be really spiritual. But he goes to pray, and what we notice here in the text is they're in the dire straits of this storm, and they don't have any capacity of seeing him. But what this text tells me is he never lost sight of them. I need you to understand that you may not perceive what God is doing in your life. You may not even perceive that God is active in your life. But I want to tell you something that I know is true. He has not forgotten you. He has not forsaken you. He has not stopped watching you. He's watching every step you take, every moment, and he is ready and willing to deliver when it's time. But he's working something in you. He's working something for you, but he's watching you. I heard the story of a little boy whose mom was very clear. You can play outside in the backyard everywhere you want to, but don't go beyond the gate. Because I don't know what you'll get into if you go beyond the gate. Stay within the yard. You know how little boys are. He played within the yard for all of 15, 20 minutes and exhausted all of the possible excitement that could be found in the yard. And it was as if a voice beckoned him. Over the gate. There's so much fun over the gate. And so he slowly but surely played his way over to the gate. And then opened the gate and stepped outside the gate. What he didn't realize is the whole time he had been playing, his mom had been standing at the window watching. And so when he started to go out the gate, she came out the back door. But she didn't say anything, she just followed. Just followed quietly behind him. Him thinking he's away from her gaze, thinking he's on his own, thinking he's doing his own thing. And then he tripped and fell and began to cry out. And as soon as he did, she was there and said, I'm here. He said, I didn't know. She said, you didn't see me, but I was always watching you. You need to understand something about your Heavenly Father. You may not feel like you can see him where you're at, but I guarantee you he sees you exactly where you're at. He's aware of it. You can't see him, but he sees you. Second thing I want you to see this morning is that Jesus is not only aware of your storm, but he is present in your storm. Here they are about 4 o'clock in the morning, and it says he comes walking on the water. I love the picture of this, because what this is Jesus doing an illustrated message right there. What he's doing is he's saying, I've already overcome what you are afraid is going to overwhelm you. This storm that you think has you is getting ready to destroy you. This thing that you think is greater than your capacity to survive. I not only am able to survive it, but I'm able to thrive on top of it. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't change me. In fact, I can do things you don't think are even possible. And he was giving them a picture to understand we're not dealing with normal forces here. You're not serving a God who's confined to your capacity. You say, I just don't know how I'm going to make it through this financial storm I'm in. Well, yeah, if you're going to have to focus on your finances, I can understand that. But you don't have to, because we serve the God who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. I don't know how I'm going to get through what the doctor told me last week. Well, of course, if it's up to you and some doctor somewhere, but we serve the great physician, the one who created your body, and he can recreate anything in your body anytime he feels like he needs to. You got to get a hold of who you're talking to, who you're following, who you're serving, who's coming to your rescue in the midst of your storm. He's not moved by what moves you. You got to get a hold of the fact that when you go to God in prayer and say, Lord, everything's falling apart, he does not in heaven go, oh, snap. Oh, I wish you wouldn't have prayed today because I was having a good day, and now you brought up this problem that I don't know what. He's already got the solution before you got in the problem. And so the Bible says that he would have passed them by. Now this is something that until I studied this deeper this week, I didn't ever understand, because I thought to myself, why did he go to all the trouble of walking out to them if he was just going to walk past them? But actually, that's one of those places where translating the Greek into the English is tricky. Because what he was saying is, he wasn't saying that he wanted to go away from them. He was saying he was wanting to pass by them. Kind of like if I were to tell you, hey, listen, I got something really cool I want to show you. Can I come by your house later today? So would that mean that you would expect that I'm going to drive past your house when I drive down your road, just drive past it? No, you would assume I'm going to pull in the driveway, come knock on the door, right? This is, I'm going to come by your house today to show you something. That is what the Greek word here is implying, that he was trying to make sure they saw him and that he was there to reveal something to them. I need you to understand that the reason why Jesus came walking on the water was he needed them to be aware, first of all, that they were not alone. He was present with them. And somebody needs to know today that God is with you. I don't care who has left you. I don't care who has given up on you. I don't care who has declared you as unfit or not good enough. I want you to know that God I serve is ever present with you. He's always in your midst. He's always as close as the mention of his name. And he's present with you right in the middle of your storm. And he needs somebody to see that today. Somebody to know that today. You're not going through this alone. He's there with you. And then the Bible says that they cried out for him. Jesus is present in the midst of our problem, but he's waiting for an invitation to get involved. Jesus doesn't fix problems that haven't been submitted to him. And here is where I wanted to get to. Because these disciples are in a mess that Jesus created for them. But in spite of the fact that Jesus created the mess, they had a solution. We're going to row our boat. I know how to do this. I don't understand why Jesus put us in this. I don't know where Jesus is right now. I don't know what exactly is going on. But I know how to row a boat, so I'm going to row a boat. Row my boat. It's not so gently going down the stream. 8 hours of rowing. 5 seconds of calling. I understand that 8 hours they're rowing, and it's in the 8 hours that he passes by. But could it be that him passing by was not because it was a prerequisite to him coming, but it was a reminder that he was available? And I wish that I could go get at the beginning of this story, go in if you ever grew up like, homeschool Christian, then like the Adventures in Odyssey. They have the imagination station where they could get in Bible stories. And if I could get in the imagination station, I'd go get with the disciples. And the minute the storm showed up, I would have said, hey guys, why don't we ask Jesus to come help? Because I just have this sneaking suspicion that I could have saved them 8 hours. Because they were rowing their boat. Because although they were being obedient, they were still trying to stay in control. I'll go in the direction you want me to go, but I'm still going to do the things I feel like I need. And I'm just going to row my boat. And how far has that gotten you? All the networking, all the conferences, all the books you've read, all the classes you've taken, all the resumes you've sent out, all the things you've done to try to rectify your situation, and you just row in your boat. How far has that got you? And today, Jesus is walking by saying, hey, I'm an option. And they called to him, and everything changed. What if? I'll never forget. Years ago, I was pastoring in DeQuoin, Illinois, and we were dealing with needing to elect a new deacon, but I didn't know if we had anybody qualified to be the deacon. But we had to elect a deacon because there were supposed to be so many deacons who were on the board according to the bylaws. So we were facing a constitutional crisis. And I spent night after night walking the floor thinking, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And finally I called one of our district leaders and I said, man, I need some help. I can't figure this one out. I've been rowing my boat and I ain't getting anywhere. And this is what he said to me. These exact words. He said, Ryan, have you prayed about it? At which point I felt like an absolute fool. Because I said, no, that hadn't occurred to me. And I prayed about it, and within 24 hours I had an answer. Sleepless nights that weren't on God. I try to blame him because he's the one who got me here. But it's my insistence of staying in control that keeps me here. It's me trying to be independent that keeps me here. But if I just learn how to call on him, if I just call on his name, say, I need your help, he is ready and willing to step into my situation. I love what it says in the text. It says at first they thought he was a ghost. That is what is so amazing, is in times of trouble, how many times has God tried to show up in your life and you thought he was the devil? Can I help you with something? I chat GPT'd something yesterday. I said, how many storms are in the Bible? And in general, now there's a couple of answers that could come up because you could talk about literal or whether they were metaphorical, but I was talking literal. There's about 10 literal storms in the Bible. And of those 10 storms, would you like to know how many of them are satanic in nature? Only one of them allegedly may have been satanic and was more likely just a natural occurrence. But in your life, how many of the storms you faced have you thought was the devil? Oh, the devil's sending this storm and this attack in my life. Maybe what you're calling a ghost is Jesus. Maybe what you're calling a devil is God. Because they're working something in your life. They have a plan that's higher than your plan. Because we spend too much time whining about the devil. You realize how much access he has to your life? It's minimal. You can give him more. But in general, he has to go before God before he can do anything to you. And can I help you? Can I help somebody? This is going to be kind of a derogatory comment, but if you'll take it, it could encourage you. You don't got enough faith for him to sign off on Job type stuff for you. He knows you can't handle it. So Satan don't have a right to do it. And so you're scared to death. The devil is coming to take you out. He doesn't have authority. So maybe what's happening is God's trying to do something in you, and it's not the devil at all. But if you call out and invite Jesus into the midst, the Bible says he comes to them and he says three things. He says, don't be afraid. First thing you need to get a hold of is you need to calm down. God's got you. He said you're going to the other side. He did not say there won't be a storm, but he did say you're going to the other side. And he doesn't lie. So the storm is a temporary distraction from the ultimate destiny God has promised to you. And all you got to do is remember that. It'll calm all of your fears. When you recognize that heaven and earth will pass away, but his word will remain. Meaning every circumstance you presently face is temporary in nature, but every promise he made is eternal in nature. So it will come to pass at the end. This is what will stand. So if he said you're going to the other side, storm away. I'm going to the other side. And I don't even have to row to get there. Because he didn't say row to the other side. He said you're going to the other side, which means it's not even on my effort. But here I am, trying to make happen what he said would happen. Then he said, take courage. That means to be brave, or it means to be of good cheer. He said, don't be afraid and cheer up. Get it together, guys. Stop walking around like you've been baptized in pickle juice. Smile, celebrate. And then he finally says, I am here. This Greek word is throwing back to the Hebrew word that was spoken by Moses. He's saying, I am. He said, I tell you the truth, before Abraham was even born. In John 8, he said, I am. They understood him to be claiming to be God. I am is a covenant name that God used to declare to his people when they were facing circumstances outside of their control. His name, I am, basically means he is promising that he would be everything we need him to be in every situation we need him. He's saying, calm down, cheer up. If Jesus were talking in Gen Z, he'd say, I'm him. No cap. I'm about to cook and leave, or eat and leave no crumbs. Yeah. You don't have to worry. I'm here. The third thing I want you to see is, and I'm done, Jesus has power over your storm. And he climbed into the boat. And I love this. He didn't say anything. He just got in the boat and the winds and the waves stopped. When John describes this same story in John chapter 6, he adds one little thing on to the end that Mark forgot to tell you. He got onto the boat, the winds and the waves ceased, and they were on the other side. 8 hours, and they were roughly 3 miles of a 6-mile trip. They call on him, and within 15 seconds, he steps into the boat, the storm stops, and they arrive at their destination immediately. I come to ask somebody, what have you been waiting on? Why do you prolong your problem by trying to do it yourself when all you have to do is call on Jesus? Invite him into the situation, and he is present and able to deliver you immediately. They did not understand. It goes on to tell us that Jesus was frustrated with them then. And he summed up why he was frustrated. He said it's because they didn't understand the miracle of the loaves. It's one of the things I didn't talk about is, remember, before they got on the boat, they were a part of the feeding of 20,000. 5 loaves, 2 fishes, we talked about a few weeks ago. They took up 12 basketfuls of remains. Now, some people say they sent it home with the little boy. That seems like a really nice thing to do. However, why would there be 12 baskets if it wasn't for 12 disciples? I think on that boat was 12 buckets full of fish and bread. And when the storm started raging, and the boat was being tossed back and forth, you know what was flying all over that deck? Fish and bread. Everywhere, I mean, they're rowing, getting smacked in the face with fish fillets. I got tartar sauce in my eye. And all that's going on right in front of them. The Bible says their hearts were hardened, they didn't get it. Why was it there? Well, because Jesus was trying to teach them something. See, because in the beginning, all of this connects. This is why you read the Bible through. Is Mark 6 began with Jesus being in Nazareth, and he couldn't do any great miracles because the people didn't believe in him. Because belief is a prerequisite to the miraculous. You stop the miraculous in your life when you walk in unbelief. Not doubt. Go back and watch that on YouTube. That's a good word. But not doubt, unbelief. But now we've seen Jesus feed the 20,000. We're seeing him work and move. They've seen him do other things. They've seen him deliver them out of a storm just a few days ago because they believed, and he showed up and solved the problem. But what he was hoping is that they would go to another level, because belief releases his power to save the day in a crisis. But trust removes the idea that there ever was a crisis. Because if they would have learned, he's got me, then fear would have never overwhelmed them. They would have never thought we're about to die if they would have been able to get to the level of trust. He was frustrated because he said, I've done so much for them. They should trust me by now. They should recognize that I won't leave them hanging because I've been there every time they call. I performed miracle every time they believe. What does it take for you to trust me? So that when things don't go your way, you don't get angry, you don't get discouraged. You just go, Jesus has this. That's where he wants to get us to. A place where we're done with our own solutions, our own answers, figuring things out our own way. And we learn how to not just believe he's able, but trust that he will. No matter what we see or what we feel. Stand with me all over the house.